Hi guys, today I wanted to show you how I go about texturing my characters using gradient texture sheets. I'll be going over how I create the base textures, how I unwrap in Blender, and how I add the little details at the end just to tie it all together. First off, I'm going to make the base textures in Photoshop. Using the selection tool, I'll mask off a strip for my first gradient. Then, with the gradient tool, I'll select the highlight color, the midtone, and the dark black of the clothing. I've added the black to this gradient as it's the closest of all the colours in the concept. This will also allow us to darken areas of the model, such as the insides of the clothing and other areas of shadow, as well as adding a little contrast to the final piece. I can now duplicate this strip and lock it so I can only work within its area, and then carry on making the other gradients for all the other colours. I'm going to go ahead and make a quick one for the hair once again using the colours on the concept. This process is great as you can just keep duplicating the strips and repeat the process for each colour. Having the strips separate also helps if I need to come back and change things in the future. I'll do this for each colour in the concept and I'll lay it out in a way that looks nice to me. For this project, I went by how prevalent the colour is in the final piece. So here we have the dark purple for the clothing, the hair colour, the skin, the gold for the sword and some of the accessories, as well as the red for the trims, and the green and blue for the buttons. You can really lay out the gradients however you want to. Now I'm going to move over to Blender to show you how I UV this kind of texture. First I'm going to select all with A, go to the edit mode, and I'm going to show you what the UVs for this project look like when it's finished. As you can see, everything is super stretched and there's a bunch of pieces that are overlapping. Normally, this is pretty bad. However, using this kind of texture, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to select the boots and unwrap them to give you an idea of how I UV the whole model. In edit mode, I'm going to press A to select all, then U to bring up this menu where I'll click project from view. This will UV the boots to my camera view. Now I have this, I can press G to move, R to rotate, and S to scale the UV islands in the viewport. Now if I select the areas where I want the red trim to be, I can drag the UVs over to that section of the texture sheet. And then for the edge, I can alt-click on the edge to select the loop and drag that over too. I'm going to place this piece a little higher to give the edge a lighter colour. And then I'll do the same for the top of the boots fold. For the inside of the boot, I'm going to select it and drag it over to make it look like it's in shadow. Now for the point of the boot. I'm going to select the area I want red using the X-ray tool. Then I'll drag this over on the UV sheet and give the top of that section an edge highlight. I'll then grab the loop above it and move that darker. This will add more contrast to this section. I will then do this for the rest of the model. Unwrapping to view to create the initial island and get a base gradient going. Then selecting loops and moving them higher or lower on the texture sheet to create sharp edges and add some shadows to the model. Next, I'll be shown how to export the UV layout and import it into Photoshop to make the last changes that we need to the texture. We're going to be selecting the UV option at the top of the viewport and go ahead and click the Export UV Layout. I'm going to name this one Eudora_UV. Then over in Photoshop, we're going to drag in the file to import it, put it at the top of the hierarchy, and then just to make it easier to see what we're doing, I'm going to change it to multiply and reduce its opacity. For this model, I only needed to make 2 additions to the gradient, the first being the stitching for the skirt. For this, I'll locate the skirt on the UV sheet. The piece was flat unwrapped to stop the stitching from warping too much, so it's pretty easy to find. I created a single line of stitches that I duplicate for both sides of the skirt section. Then using the curve tool, I help to make sure it fits against the curved side. The next addition was the texture for the rope portions of the model. I made a section of the hair gradient and atlas for the repeating rope texture. I then used a simple tiling texture from Google and overlay it with the hair colours to help it blend. It took a little tweaking until I was happy with it, but it's super easy to iterate on this kind of texture. And that's pretty much it. Here she is with the finished textures and an animation made by myself in Blender. I really like using gradient textures in my work, and especially enjoy making this kind of character. In fact, I've made a character before using this exact same method, but the texture sheet for that character actually contained both Player 1 and Player 2 textures. I hope this video was somewhat informative on my process, and if you have any questions, please feel free to comment or message me on my Twitter. Thanks for watching.